Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Playful Humans podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague, and my guest this week is Katz. She is a special effects coordinator, and she leads an awesome soft skills development workshop you can find at allhandsinworkshops.com. It involves puppetry. She does prosthetics and cool special effects, practical effects for movies like Aquaman. We'll talk a little bit about that and how she is playing for a living. If you would like a little more fun, flow, and fulfillment in your life, go to playfulhumans.com. Check out the podcast, the community there. We even have a quiz you can take. playfulhumans.com/quiz. Here we go. Don't wait for there we go. Now, Kate, I was thinking about prosthetics. Really, a hairpiece is all that I have these days. I was gonna hold up a fake hand or have some sort of practical effect ready for you, but before
you
we
look
get into
beautiful
that,
the way you are, Mike.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. But I'll be honest, I am jealous of every haircut. Start with the joke of the week. The joke of the week is brought to you by corduroy pillows. It goes with my bald head. Did you hear about the new corduroy pillows, Kate?
I did not.
They're making headlines.
Oh,
Hey-o. Okay, here's the official joke. Official joke of the week is a burger walks into the bar and the bartender says, "Sorry, we don't serve food here."
Oof.
All right. That's the response it deserved. Do you have a joke for us?
I do. It's just as bad as those two.
Good.
What did the sock puppet say to the sock?
Ooh, I don't know.
Looks like you could use a hand. Hey!
Nice. It goes with
the
website,
puppet theme.
allhandsinworkshops.com. They involve puppetry to teach soft skills and soft skill development for people, corporations, businesses, all that kind of good stuff. And your job of being a assistant coordinator for a special effects company that works on movies, I think is super cool. I've always been a sci-fi nerd. I love all of that. I would say I enjoy puppets, but maybe that's where we start. I kind of feel like puppets can also be like clowns, where
totally.
You can enjoy it maybe from afar a little bit better than when somebody is doing puppetry or clowning to you.
Yes.
It can be a little scary or creepy. What's your take?
Statement that you just made, because I have seen a lot of amazing puppetry in my life that has been really moving and really grounding, and it's the art form that I connect to the most deeply. And I have seen some terrible puppetry in my life, which is oh God, it's so anxiety producing. It's everything that you just described, of like that clown entertainment magician sort of level of like, oh, okay, we're here. Let's just, okay, is this almost over? Is the ride almost done? Yeah, it runs the gamut. And I think that part of having an educated background in puppetry, part of understanding the power of this art form, also allows me to hopefully elevate people's experiences when they're interacting with puppets, or especially with the work that I do with my company, All Hands In. When people come to this training, and so creating
your take.
Absolutely. I would completely agree with that assessment. My background is actually in puppetry. I went to the University of Connecticut for graduate school in puppetry. And then, over the years, I transitioned into special effects when I moved out to Los Angeles. And so during the duration of my career as a puppeteer, I have seen incredible, groundbreaking work that is riveting and emotionally captivating. And it's one of the reasons why I'm drawn to the art form of puppetry. It has a very visceral energy for me. And I have seen the other side of that spectrum, which is terrible puppetry, where you're just sort of like gritting and smiling and hoping to just get through this moment as quickly as possible, because it can feel like a clown performing or a magician performing, where it's very awkward. And my hope is that because of the background and the training that I've had with the education and the experience that I've had, I hope that I am elevating the art form of puppetry so that it has less awkwardness to it, and it's more inviting and more playful and more welcoming. And that's also part of the challenge that I've been tasked with soft skill development through my company, All Hands In. 99.9% of my participants are adults who are not puppeteers. And so when you're inviting them into this space where you're asking them to play, you're asking them to be vulnerable, and you're asking them to take risks between being playful and being vulnerable, you have to create a very safe and structured environment for these adults to come to in that space. And what I've discovered over time, having done this work now for a number of years, is that when adults are given permission and freedom and safety to play, it creates a sense of wonder and magic that many adults have not experienced since childhood. And to me, that is incredibly powerful. To me, that is the value of this work.
Well, now you're speaking my language. That's definitely what I'm all about, no matter what the medium is. And I think puppetry obviously is one of those things that can be very playful and create an environment for that. You hit a couple of things that I thought were interesting. I wanted to dive deeper into. First one is, I think it's permission. You know, like if
say more,
if a
say
magician
more, Mike.
comes up and says like, do you want to see a magic trick? And you're like, well, I can't say no now to your face, so I gotta awkwardly sit here while you do this thing, you know. Or they're amateurs, I think is always more awkward than if you go pay money to see David Copperfield. You're already enrolled in that journey. You're excited about seeing it. You know it's going to be a good act and it's going to be professional. It doesn't have that awkwardness. And I feel like clowning and puppetry is kind of the same way. Like if somebody whips out a puppet at the grocery store and starts talking to it or talking to you with it, you're going to be creeped out, right?
It's so,
if you're in this safe setting that's playful, right, and you know everybody's going to do something funny, it's a lot different. It can be a lot more beneficial.
It's totally different. And you would be very surprised at how you show up in that space. And I'm saying this to like all human beings, right? Like when you're extended that invitation and you're given that permission, you show up differently.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
And I think that's the cool part about play I want to dive into here in a second. Please. But I have one more question about puppets and special effects, because I learned about the Uncanny Valley a couple of years ago. If you know about this, there's this thing where like if puppets, you know, are fake, like on Sesame Street or Fraggle Rock was my favorite kid. You know that those are puppets and you're safe. But when puppets or robots start to become more real and special effects are like a human looking puppet, it starts to creep us out. It looks more like a sick human and that's what they call uncanny human, that it starts to get weird. So I'm wondering what your take is on that, especially when special effects get better. There is this valley where like better isn't always more effective, because sometimes there can be a weird moment there where it's almost better to be fantasy than real.
I think that the conversation, I think an important addition into this conversation is how are we defining better? Right. And when this conversation comes up, which it comes up quite frequently, especially as technology's improving and as production wants to, you know, save money and cut budgets. And this is sort of a nice area to sort of look at and flesh out a little bit, because, well, if we don't have to hire the star, why would we?
Right. Yeah.
The point is, in my opinion, coming up through puppetry and special effects as a career, I have watched the highs and lows of when studios have wanted to get away from practical effects as much as possible and really run from it, to now where we're recognizing that movies, and this is not, I'm not taking a swipe at any of these movies. It's just sort of using these movies as examples. With a movie like 300, and a lot of the movies are still being done this way. 300 was pretty much entirely green screen, right? It was entirely a VR movie. And one of the criticisms that people had with 300 was that it was really difficult to connect with the reality of that world. That's not to say that it wasn't entertaining, or that it was the violence wasn't violent enough, or any of those things. But when we are exploring human connection, and I personally think that this is one of our hardest, hardwired, evolutionary aspects about ourselves. When we're exploring human connection, and we are exploring our belonging, our sense of belonging through that human connection, we are very quick to pick up on those human cues. And sometimes we can see those human cues in a living puppet. I know for me, when I was a child, puppetry was my jam. I could talk to a puppet all day. I picked up on that energy. There was something happening there that was really kinetic. And conversely, when it's not there, when I'm interacting with, like, for, a lack of a better example, like when I'm in a Hall of Presidents and there's a malfunction, right?
Yeah.
It's the last place on earth I want to be. Right. It's really, like, for multiple reasons. But
well, I think you hit on something interesting there for me, which is, I think that's what it is. Like, if it's Star Wars or Avatar or Jurassic Park, I know inherently that there aren't aliens and dinosaurs. So I like the special effects because I'm enrolled in this willing suspension of disbelief. But I don't want to see a romantic comedy where Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler are CGI generated.
Right.
Because I know that's not going to be real. I'm not going to have that same emotional connection to that. But then on the flip side, there is a thing where sometimes that disconnect allows us to open up, like, play therapy with children and using puppets to talk about their emotions. It's easier to use an alter ego of a puppet to talk about a problem than it is to say, I have a problem.
100%. 100%. And, conversely, what I've noticed working with adults in this world is that the style of puppet, and I should be clear here, the style of puppet that I use in my workshop is a very specific style where it requires 3 puppeteers to operate one puppet. And we do this non-verbally, right? So it's not that you're not speaking in a crazy puppet voice. Like, that's not what we're doing. I don't have the patience or the bandwidth for that. And I'm not going to ask my participants to do that either, right? It's about connecting on a collaborative level and getting an inanimate object to come to life with believability, and the group mentality that gets formed in that collaborative endeavor. And it's taking those experiences that those participants are having and then extrapolating that and saying, when you're at work, you're doing the same thing. You're using the same muscles. You're activating the same regions of your brain. The fact that you may have been struggling prior to this course with things like awareness or adaptability or communication or problem solving, just recognize that while you were here with me playing with puppets, those were all of the skills that you were developing. And I think, getting back to your earlier point, Mike, it's paying attention to these nuanced moments. And AI, Silicon Valley is chomping at the bit to tell us that we're all gonna be replaceable. Like, they're all coming in with the next human 2.0. This is the magic sauce that cannot be created by technology.
Yeah.
It just cannot be created by technology. This is the divine in the human essence. And I do not think that we can program that.
No, that's so cool. You're speaking my language. 2 things there. First of all, working together as a team, right? I think that's what you're trying to do with marketing and sales and operation, is to get everybody moving these pieces at the same time in concert, so it all works together and puts on a good show for the client. So I love what you're talking about there. And I also love that you shouted out the creepy puppet voice, although I do a lot of impressions. and crazy voices
And
myself.
I love a good creepy puppet voice. Don't get me wrong, but there's a place for it, and it's not in my workshops.
No, but I get that part of it, because one of my fears, like for the first, I don't know, 75 episodes of this show, I was wearing a jacket because I wanted to be seen as professional and not like the crazy arrow through the head guy
Right.
talking about a play podcast, because I don't think people can relate to that.
Oh God, isn't that
I love
the
that you do
truth?
it in a professional manner. I think that's huge. And then finally, what you said about AI, I think is exactly true for me too. I hate the metaverse and the whole idea of that, of like why we would want to like disconnect even more from reality when we've all been virtual for the last 2 years. And
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but it hasn't worked out well for a whole lot of people.
No.
The numbers on depressions and anxiety and just unhappy humans has
Yeah, and
skyrocketed.
from a
And
soft
that's
skill
before we
perspective, yeah. And from a
before the
soft skills,
metaverse.
that's before the metaverse. That's right. And so if we look at what was happening during COVID, did I lose you?
Yep. So it was right at the beginning of that answer. So you can go again, just start over there.
Okay.
That was before the metaverse.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, 100%. I completely agree with you. And, what I was noticing during COVID was that, particularly when it came to soft skills, those skills fell right off a cliff. They just went straight into decline. And it's not really an area that we're talking about. It's not really an area that companies are looking at investing yet, because everybody's still in triage, right? We're all still in triage. But the feeling that I have in this moment is that soft skill development and soft skill training needs to be a necessary component to this triage coming out of this pandemic. Because if we're not working on developing these skills, how are we going to be connecting with each other? What is that world going to look like if we can't communicate?
Yeah, I say the same thing in my workshops, that whether it's play or the sales
Completely
training that I
understandable.
do,
Yeah.
like people are not becoming better communicators, right?
No.
Like, I mean, you look at, I'm not hating on young people, but a high school or college graduate today compared to one 50 years ago, I think the writing, the verbal skills, the communication and teamwork is much lower. And I'm somewhere in the middle there. I'm lucky that I feel like we're maybe close to the same age, that we grew up with technology is different. Like you understand, I was the remote control when I was a kid. I had to get up and change the channel.
100%. That's right.
Right?
I was on the cusp. I was on the cusp of that
There you go.
technological evolution where I didn't have to change the channel in my house. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like I understand the playing outside and the not having a phone on you or the internet and stuff, and just not knowing stuff, right? Having a conversation with your friends and going, who was that guy in that one movie? And not knowing and having no way to look it up. Right. I think those are kind of things that maybe people forget these days. And if we don't intentionally go back the other way, and we don't intentionally put this soft skills in, this real world play, this emotional connection with another human, it goes away fast.
So fast.
We lose those skills so fast. We get
So
rusty.
fast. And regaining those skills and retraining those skills is actually not as difficult as we think.
Yeah.
But we just do not know how to practice these skills. And that's where the difficulty comes in. And, when I made this connection between puppetry and soft skills development, one of the first things that I did early on, this was
Oops, I lost you again for quite a while there. You're still frozen. Sorry, lost you again there. I don't know.
Where did we want to pick it up from?
Yeah, we're doing a bang up job with soft skills and communication that we're trying to talk about. But but don't let that get frustrated with you. Other than I think you just froze again.
Is the signal too poor?
It might be. We might need to reconnect,
Mhm.
but also I can edit it and make us look good. So as long as you're not getting too frustrated,
No,
we'll
that's
just
not at all.
we'll
That's
keep
fine.
going, and nobody will ever know that we had a problem
Okay.
because I'll just make it look good.
Thanks.
Um,
I appreciate it. Sorry for the extra work.
no, it's all right. Maybe just start over at when I made the soft skills connection with puppetry, but you're frozen again. So I don't know what we can do to fix this. I'm gonna make
Okay.
sure it's not me. Is there anything else you can close that's running in the background, or a different Wi-Fi spot or anything? What do you think?
Let's see. Your screen is still frozen. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I have nothing else open. This is it.
I am losing you quite a bit. It's kind of every 30 seconds here. I don't know if we can get it going or not. Let me pause the.
All right. What was I talking about?
So the question was about making the real life connection between puppetry and soft skills, and we were talking about how you can bring that back. You can bring those skills back.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's the thing. I mean, the skills fall off so quickly, but what we don't realize is those skills can constantly be regained and retrained and strengthened throughout our entire lives. In the beginning, when I was doing this work, and I made this connection between the puppetry training that I had growing up, and starting my career, and feeling really solid in the knowledge of that, and connecting that with workshops and exercises that were focused on soft skill development. The moment that I saw that connection, I thought to myself, holy shit, this is really important. Somebody else has to be doing this. So I spent the next 3 days on the internet, just looking to see who else was doing this so that I didn't have to start a company and become an entrepreneur. If I'm being honest, I was looking for an out. So when I didn't see that, I was like, oh my God, this is what you have to step into this world. You have to step into this role. And what's been amazing is the reinforcement of understanding how trainable these skills are in adults, and especially when you're enveloping it in a platform of play and you have adults that come to that environment with a willingness to play, the skills just explode. And you're watching people who have struggled with being adaptable or being able to communicate effectively now suddenly having a pathway to these skills. It's really incredible.
Yeah, I found the exact same thing when I was looking at play and some of the game show workshops that I do, and just gamification and things for adults, that when I saw that, I was like, oh, you idiot. It makes so much sense. Working harder and longer is only sustainable to a certain degree, right?
Yes,
and
yes.
Same thing with our computer and internet connections and the hard skills that you're talking about. Those are all great, but they only take you to a certain point in your career, and then you're going to need soft skills at some point.
You are,
and no matter
100%
what you're
going to.
really good at, you're going to have to sell that service to somebody or that product to somebody at some point. You're going to have to work with another teammate at some point. And when you can do that from a playful space, it just makes everything so much easier.
Oh
And
yeah.
I remember having unlimited energy when I was a kid, right? And part of it's being younger. I get all of that. But when you're playing and engaged, even as an adult now, I just got back from a 10-day vacation. The month before that, I had COVID and I was quarantined, and then I was working from home behind my computer all day. And I did more in 10 days than I had done the 30 days previously.
Isn't that amazing?
Because it was fun, and we were going to the zoo and SeaWorld and walking and playing with my nieces and nephews and playing on the beach and swimming and jumping and running. It was like, that was more
Yeah.
action, but
Yeah.
I
A
had the
hundred
energy
percent.
for
You
all
had
of
the
it
energy for it.
because
You had the
it
energy
was
for it. That's
playful and
right.
it wasn't work. It was chosen fun things that engage us. And I think all that is so cool. And I wanted to switch to the conversation about you and your career, because I find
Yeah.
those stories interesting. And you mentioned you had to start this. I kind of found the opposite when I looked into play research, and I found that there were other play professionals in the world
Mm,
that ran workshops and played with adults. I was like, how did I not know that was a thing?
right.
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 It was like, I need to do that right away. I
Hmm.
auditioned for 2 game show companies and started hosting game shows for corporate events. And I was like,
Awesome.
I need to do this. And then both of us, we didn't just quit our job and randomly like go live on a beach somewhere and,
No.
have a midlife crisis and freak out. We did this in an intelligent way. So I would love to hear your story about how you're building this up over time so that maybe someday you can just do this for yourself, but it doesn't have to be today. And it doesn't mean you have to be a starving artist either.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the biggest evolution for me in this process has been deciding for myself what entrepreneurship is going to look like for me. And that's been
Mm.
sort of wrestling with outside of the structures of capitalism and outside of the sort of mandated structures of what success has typically been dictated to be. That has not been an easy journey for me. Our culture does not make that easy. But the way that I came to the place that I'm at now really began back in 2016 when I was wrestling with a lot of concepts that were centered around leadership. That
Mhm.
was a difficult time for me, both personally and professionally. I was at another special effects studio during that time where the culture of that space was very toxic. And the leadership in that space was very toxic. And it just bled out into the overall culture of that studio. And so I was going home and like waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, just thinking about like, why why does leadership suck so much right now? Like, why are we at such a deficit for effective leadership in this moment? And originally I was focusing on the women that I was working with and where there was difficulty in the female relationships with each other. And that was something that I really wanted to only focus on. And when I was waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was like, I have this puppetry background. I have this puppetry training. I've been doing exercises, throughout my career where if I just put that through a different lens, if I just shift the lens and it's not so much about the manipulation of the puppet, but it's more about what's happening between the people who are doing the manipulation of the puppet, what's happening to the group dynamic, right? For lack of a better word, the puppeteers in this scenario, right? And when I say puppeteers, I mean my general participants who may
Yeah.
not be considered puppeteers, but what's happening within that collaborative structure. And when I laid that lens over the puppetry workshops that I was teaching, I recognized I had a completely different trajectory to focus on, that it was much more fun. And I didn't have the language of soft skills at the time. I did not know that vocabulary. I just knew, oh, this makes people talk better. Or, oh, in this moment when I was on set and I wasn't puppeteering, I had a real piss poor problem adapting to this change. And had it been a puppet that needed to do this, I would have done it without question. So what's happening between these two different scenarios and how can we bridge that gap, right? And so then I began to develop curriculum, laying over my puppetry training with this new lens of team building and leadership training. When I looked at what I created, I reached out to a handful of my really supportive and wonderful girlfriends who I love dearly and said, I will
Mm.
invite you over to the house and I will make you dinner. And you have to tell me if I'm crazy. Like, I need you to do these workshops and I need you to tell me if I'm nuts. Because if I'm nuts, I'll go back to whatever else I was doing. And if there's
That's so
something
great.
here, I got to tease this out. That's essentially how the company got born. And then once I developed that, then I noticed it could not just be limited to one demographic in our society. It had to be open to all people. And the reason why I focus on adults specifically is because when this work clicks with adults, the profundity of it is
Yeah.
it's so important that I cannot ignore that.
Same. Two things that you mentioned there that jumped out to me.
Mm,
Number one, I love that you choose the word soft skills, but I also think that it needs some clarity. Seth Godin calls them real skills because
yes.
I think we get bad rap that, and I do sales training and communication skills
Mm-hmm.
training and other stuff that people don't understand that these are skills that you learn. You are not born with them. You learn
No,
how to play nice on a playground.
that's
You,
right.
you learn how to work with teammates, and you can fix soft skills issues where hard skills, I feel like maybe, I don't even want to say that. I was going to say maybe they're more talent based and stuff, but I don't even think that's true. I think that you may have a proclivity to something, but these are skills that are learned behavior. They're not magical innate qualities of personality or your human characteristics that you're born with.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that to a certain extent, like I know within my hard skill set, like I'm a creative, right? I'm a creative.
Mm.
I am a communicator. Well, that's a soft skill, but you know, it's a creative. I enjoy painting. I enjoy puppetry. I enjoy the more right-brained centered activities. Could I be an accountant? Yes, I could be. I would be a miserable accountant, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
my jam, but I could learn those skills. Hard skills are definitely, like both of these sets are learnable, but we discover is the hard skills we tend to gravitate toward what is a purpose driven
It's
skill for us.
measurable, really
It's
is.
measurable.
And that's going to take me to my second point where it's the culture thing, right? The culture
Yes.
likes measurable things. The culture
Yes.
likes things that we can tell if you got an A on the math test or not. We can't tell if you got an A on the sales pitch
Right.
or not, right?
Right.
Or the leadership initiative. It's hard.
It's harder, and there are ways of skewing you know, ROI when it comes to soft skills. There are ways of gaining sort of value around that, and I have no problem with having those conversations because I think that those conversations are valid and important. What I would add to this conversation is that we have a definite apprehension when we hear the term soft in our culture, right? And that is a conversation that I want to keep having in this moment right now, because I don't know if we understand why we have that apprehension. Like there's a lot of visceral reaction when soft skills comes up, and then the debate needs to be, well, it needs to be people skills, or these are human skills, or if we say soft, it's going to sound weak, and no, I don't want my team to be, you know, I'm like, everybody's afraid of the P word, right? Nobody wants to be perceived as a pussy. Like, let's be really clear about what this conversation means, right? And so when we hear the term soft, we have all these ingrained reactions. But I don't know if we were actually sitting down and questioning why we have those reactions and where those reactions are coming from.
Yeah.
If we put soft skills through the lens of authenticity, right? Vulnerability, the ability as a human to be seen, heard, and valued. This is what softening allows for us. And we have this correlation that soft equals weak, right? Vulnerable is like the shittiest thing that you can do on the planet, right? But in the reality of things, vulnerable requires a tremendous amount of courage. And soft is not fragile. Soft is malleable. And the courage that comes through vulnerability is what is required to soften in that moment. The bravest people that I have seen doing this work are the ones who have given over and leaned into that softness. And then what comes out of that softness is the ability to actually make deeper, more connected connections to your fellow human beings. And therefore, what you're receiving in those moments are being valid. You are seeing, your humanity is being seen by another human being. We do not function in a society where that is happening at large to most people. Most people are not getting that daily experience, but they should be.
No, I love that, and I support all of it. I think it's so true that, and maybe it's my personality too, but just, you know, being honest with everybody is I struggled always with that like masculine
Of
identity
course,
of being
Mike.
like super strong, and I'm a nice guy, and you feel like even with dating in high school and stuff, like nobody wants to be the nice guy. Like you want to be the badass, you want to be the tough guy, like
Yeah, you were
you
told
know.
that like chicks love the bad guys, right?
Right. And then nice
Right.
guys finish last. And I
Right.
don't believe that to be true. I think people take advantage of leaders and bosses that are assholes that are pinching pennies and not treating them right. That if you have somebody that genuinely cares about you and that cares about the organization and helping people, you don't steal from charities like that.
Right.
That's a jerk thing to do. And then
Right.
it's clear who the jerk is in that case, right? But
Yes.
if you're hard, if you're profit focused, if you're 100%, trying to drive for the bottom line, and somebody else says, well, I'm going to take as much money out of this company as I can too, because that's what the owners and the leaders are doing.
That's right.
Then you could see, I think, okay, that's fair play. All's
That's
fair in
right.
love and war then, and corporations. But I feel like somebody said it once, if corporations were people, they'd be assholes.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is true so much of the time, that if we could just get nicer, more playful humans and playful companies trying to make the world a better place, what people don't realize is that all of the research shows that makes a dramatic impact. That by optimizing and driving people and measuring stuff, you can increase a few percentage points here and there for a short period of time, maybe. But when you do something that matters and connect with people on an emotional level, those increase like 30, 80,
Yes.
200%
Yes.
your results. And it doesn't matter what you're measuring at that point, because you're picking up cash.
Yeah.
Like piles
100%.
of it.
And we're seeing this play itself out just in a very different way right now, right? It's showing up in not necessarily like the direct correlation where attrition, right? Keeping staff on right now is like companies are hemorrhaging people. Companies are hemorrhaging people right now. And the smart companies are the ones who are taking a step back in this moment and asking, what could we do better? Right? What is the culture that led us here? What do we need to change about our culture in this moment? The smart companies are doing that. The companies that are going to continue to face these problems are doubling down on the toxic and dangerous cultures that they're most likely swimming in, because people don't stay in holistic cultures.
Yeah.
If you're creating a holistic culture for your people, you're not struggling with the same things that 60 to 70% of the other corporations are struggling with right now. You're in a very different category, and you're in a category where you're actually allowed to have a growth mindset, where all these other companies are plugging holes in a dam that's probably going to be 10 years away from exploding.
Yeah. I, again, second, love all of that. Want to wrap up here. One last question for you personally, and then we'll play a game. What's on your fun bucket list? What would be the most fun for you, or where do you see this going? What's an ideal playful career for you?
I mean, for me, ideally, the conversations that I have with my bosses at Fractured is that I want to get to a place where the time, energy, and love that I have put into Fractured and the time, energy, and love that I have put into All Hands In creates these entities. Like, it just uplifts both of these things to their highest. And that when both of these things are in a place of thriving, I will be able to pick between both of them. Like, I'll be able to pick one. That's my ultimate goal, is to invest in my boss's vision, to invest in the artists that I work with, to invest in the culture of the studio, because that's an active soft skill arena that I go to every day, where I walk my walk every day, and I'm held accountable whether I want it or not every day. And that informs the work that I do with All Hands In. And so if I'm able to take that energy and then plant the seeds that I'm planting with All Hands In, my dream would be to get both of these things to a place where they're both thriving and I get to choose.
I agree. I think that's a great goal. It's awesome. I think also companies with scarcity mindsets don't understand the value of practice and side hustles and other things that you learn so much more. You can make so many more mistakes when it's your company and your side hustle and not your full-time job. That there's tremendous growth opportunity in playing with ideas and companies and your work hours and everything else, that a lot of cool things can come from that. All right. Are you ready to play a game?
I am ready. Let's do it.
All right. We are spinning the wheel o games, 10 games that it could land on. And you got survey says again, a lot of our wedges are survey says. I'm going to be honest. Okay. All you have to do is get one of the top 5 answers. We surveyed 100 people. Top 5 answers on the board. Name a place where everyone stares if you come in late.
Oof. Lecture hall.
Yes, lecture hall is number 5. You barely made it on there.
Oh my God.
Work, business meeting, wedding, and then church. Church was the number.
Oh, I was also going to say a delivery room, but that wasn't on the list at all. Okay, great.
Oh, that's good. I like that. All right. Name a precious stone or gem.
Diamond.
Number one answer. That one's
right.
easy.
Okay, good.
We also have ruby, emerald, opal, and pearl. Now, this is the tough one. I saved it for last. Name a device some people just can't figure out how to work.
Oh God, I can't say my first answer. Think about another one. A microwave.
100 other people said, oh, that's a good one. Most people can't change the clock on their microwave or change temperatures and things, but it is not on there. We have VCR, DVD player, computer, cell phone.
That's so dated. How old is your audience?
I know, remote control women. It says copyright 2019. That's
okay.
GameCube and remote control were also on there. But you got it. 2 out of 3 means you win a free 30-second commercial for whatever you would like to ask or give for our audience. I'll cover some easy stuff. We're talking with Kate Katz. She does all hands in workshops.com. If you would like to work on your soft skills, you also heard about her special effects. If you happen to be making another movie like Aquaman and you need some prosthetics or practical effects, you could talk to her about that. But I think more likely, if you have a culture that needs to work together as a team, go to allhandsinworkshops.com. Link is in the show notes. Anything else you can?
Oh my God, you did such a beautiful pitch for me. I don't know if I could top that. I just would say, like, listening to, speaking to your audience, if you are somebody who is actively struggling with these skills right now, or if you are somebody who's on a team and you see that your team is actively struggling with these skills right now, or a leader who's actively struggling with these skills right now, connect with me. Let's have a conversation. The way that I approach this work is very playful. It's very inclusive. It's very safe. And I think that you will be surprised by what you discover about yourself and your colleagues.
That is awesome. Kate, thank you so much for being on the show. If you would like more information on Playful Humans, go to playfulhumans.com. It can't be any easier to remember. But I think also, if you know of anybody that needs to hear this message, like Kate mentioned, send a podcast to somebody that needs to hear it. If you know of any young people, help them avoid a cubicle job and design a playful career for themselves, or maybe somebody that's going through that midlife renaissance and you think they need to feel a connection with other people going through that same thing, go to playfulhumans.com. Check it out. We'll see you next time.
Don't wait for tomorrow. Live for today. Keep on chasing the sunshine and go out and play.
Go play, everybody.